say to one of the nurses, who are these people? And he's like, oh, they're the preachers from the Baptist church down the street. And he is up in front, have you been saved? Has Jesus forgiven you? If you died tonight, would you go to heaven or hell? And just spewing such fear and hate is how I took it. And
was Buttercup around?
No, she was in the office. She might have helped. But as I looked over the
she would have run away.
Yeah. As I looked over the faces of the residents who I love, and I feel protective of them. Some of them have dementia, and they looked confused, like, oh, did I do something wrong? Why is he yelling? And others looked scared, and I felt this come over me where I just wanted to grab him by the shirt and go, you dumbass, you're not helping this situation at all. I know it can't make you feel good with how do you think this is helping them? And what I'm trying to figure out is if I'm centered and connected, why does that, when I see that in other people, even like family members have posted on Facebook, to fear God is to love God, or I don't know. And I'm like, how do you put fear and love in the same sentence? But I'm trying to figure out what it is that makes me angry about that.
Well, you said something just now. If I'm connected, why do I feel like that? And we want to say you don't feel like that when you're in alignment with who you are. So what are you going to do about that? Are you going to ask them to believe differently? Are you going to ask them to behave differently? Or are you going to be able to be in alignment even if they are behaving in a way that isn't pleasing to you? In other words, this is a really powerful example of a condition that really yanked your chain. And unless you're really secure in what you know.
But I am. They're not making me question it. I'm just wondering why it's such a negative reaction I have.
Because you were worried about them upsetting people that you cared about. Because you were worried about the path of least resistance for the patients. But can you protect them from their own beliefs, or from their family members, or from each other, or from someone who is well-meaning, who... This is what we were talking about earlier when we were saying that almost everyone wants to be heard, and almost everyone believes that they are standing in a place of rightness. That's why they want to explain. And so it's really not so different, you or Abraham expressing what we know, than anyone expressing what they know. Shouldn't they have the opportunity to say what they believe to be?
But we know that your emotions are your guide. And if you're feeling good, you're on a path that's...
You know that, and we know that, but they don't know that. And apparently you didn't know it for a minute either, because your emotions got the best of you. In other words, you see what we're getting at?
I just wonder why they would want to go to church and preach that and think that, because I know it can't be making them feel good.
Well, so let's walk through this. Let's talk about path of least resistance. So we're going to give you a little basis first. One day Esther was watching something on television years ago, really upsetting. It was something that was happening to children, and Esther had to sit down. Her knees would not hold her. Very upsetting to her. And once she settled down, her question to us was, if that felt this bad to me, on the other side of the world, completely removed from that, what must it feel like to those who are right in the middle of it? And we said, Esther, you are feeling worse than they are, because the relationship between where you are and who you're allowing yourself to be in that moment was a big distance, where they were more accustomed to what they were feeling. In other words, their desires were not highlighted so that their current beliefs were not hindering them. You get the sense of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so let's walk through this in terms of path of least resistance. So you're starting with the premise, and it's all right, because you get to have your opinion however it is. And even if you've learned your opinion in part from us, still we're going to have fun with you about this. So you get to believe what you believe, and your life validates to you in response to this gap large or small, that you are managing. So let's say that someone really wants to do good, and they've looked around the world and they've seen a lot, and they're not even sure what right and wrong is, but they want to do what's good. So let's say that at a really early age, someone who is important to them begins telling them what's right and what's wrong. And so we want to ask you, from the standpoint of a child, what's the path of least resistance for the child? To believe what his parents say, or to not believe what his parents say?
Believe what his parents say.
So as this child gets older and starts having some experiences of his own, he might then begin to discover some different path of lesser resistance. But let's say, for whatever reason, that this person continues to want to do what he believes is good, and has not understood about law of attraction, and has not come into contact with any information about what your guidance system is, but still just vehemently wants to do what's good. So is it the path of least resistance for him maybe to go to church rather than not to go to church? Can you sort of kind of see that? So what you're questioning, and we talk about this a lot too, is how does a person get to a place where their own guidance system can be so completely ignored?
Yes.
And it's because they've been in an environment where they haven't allowed themselves to really acknowledge what they are feeling. You answered your own question with your statement about how does an angry God and a loving God end up in the same sentence. It does not. It cannot be vibrationally accurate. But if someone hasn't reasoned them out through their own resources, if you are one of many of the people upon this earth who the only way you can discover right or wrong, or discover what the best path for you to follow, is by comparing the fully manifested version of people, you're having a lot of trouble, because the conditions of their life experiences are so convoluted and so varied. It really isn't until you get inside of this emotion that you could ever sort it out. So what's the path of least resistance for you? Think about this. When you see someone doing what you believe is unnecessarily torturing people that you care about, and maybe even unnecessarily leading them astray,
right,
from your point of view, what's the path of least resistance for you in that scenario? To hate those people, to hate those haters, or to love them?
I didn't hate him. I just wanted him to go.
Well, we're using strong words here, but you were offering a pretty strong vibration. Theoretically, then, pretend like we're not talking about you. What's the path of least resistance? To hate the haters, or to try to give them the benefit of the doubt?
Give them benefit of the doubt.
So now let's take that a little further. So as you give them the benefit of the doubt, as you try to give them the benefit of the doubt, do you think that they mean well or mean harm in being there? In other words, let's say they're misguided, just for kicks. But whether they're misguided or not, do you think that they mean well or they mean harm?
I think they mean well, and they're doing the best they can with the knowledge that they have.
All right, so they mean well. So now ask yourself, do you mean well or do you mean harm?
I mean well.
So you're doing the best that you can relative to them. Is it the path of least resistance for you to give them the benefit of the doubt, or for you to really focus upon the harm that they could be doing? What's the path of least resistance for you?
Benefit of the doubt.
So do you believe that they have access to source energy also?
Yes.
Do you believe that their guidance system is working right here and now? In other words, do you believe that...
No, I don't think they're tuned into their guidance system.
But do you believe that their inner being has an opinion?
Oh, yes.
And do you believe that some of the anger that they are demonstrating is evidence that their guidance is showing them in that moment that they're off track here?
Oh, that's good, yeah.
Oh, what are you
like
witnessing? Are you witnessing somebody in harmony with Source or in discord with Source? So their guidance system is really working well, isn't it? So now is the path of least resistance for you to lovingly assist or to get in their face and make it worse? Let's say, just for kicks, to lovingly assist. So let's say, because you feel different now, because
I do. You made me look at it differently.
you just said something very profound. You just acknowledged that their guidance system is working, and that's why they're so angry. Holy crap. Don't you think that's something really worth thinking about? So that's why they're shaking their fists. They're not worried about their salvation, so to speak. They are feeling their own discord with everything that they want. Everything that matters to them is on the line here. Their own belief system is being challenged by their own beliefs. Because what the source within them knows and what they are demonstrating in that moment is at odds. So now, if you're in alignment, let's say that you get a do-over on that, and you will. And let's say that now you're sort of in a different place than you were before. So now you witness that, but then on the way out, you walk out with the one who did the most speaking. And you say, you know, I didn't always, but I want you to know I really do appreciate you guys taking your time to come here tonight. I know that your heart is really in the right place. I know that you really care about all of this. And last time you were here, or before when I saw something like this, I had a sort of feeling come over me. It was sort of like almost an inspiration from God as it was happening, as a result of what you said here. And that'll get their attention because they like thinking that they are that inspiration of God. And then you could say, following your path of least resistance, it just makes me wonder how in sync or in harmony any of us are with God, which I know is love, when we feel anger. What do you think about that? I was hoping you'd come back so I could ask you that. They'll take pause at that. And then you say, well, or better, maybe I have a better question for you. Were you feeling angry? Because you looked like you were. You looked angry. Were you angry? And we think that they would say no. We think that they would say, no, I'm representing the love of God.
Right.
And then you might say, well, it didn't feel loving.
Right.
It didn't feel loving. Didn't feel comforting. Didn't feel loving. Frankly, didn't feel like God. Didn't feel like that. So I thought maybe you weren't there.
That's good.
Well, the only hope you have of assisting anyone is to acquaint them with their own guidance system. Now, if you've got their attention, then you could go on to say that God is always right there for me. And sometimes I can feel and hear, and sometimes I cannot. And when I'm in the state that I saw you in, when I'm in that state, I know that I'm a million miles from allowing the inspiration of God. I do not believe that God is ever shaking his finger at any of us. I do not believe that. And when you do not represent God from my point of view. You do not. You do not represent God from my point of view. Or you could take the path of least resistance and just mind your own business. Because everything that we just said here was reasonable, and everything that we just said here really represents what you know, and it came into alignment for you and for a lot of people. But if you were to say that to them, all you would get is a wall of resistance.
Right.
All you would get is more. Nothing good would come of it, because if they're not in the receptive mode of God directly, what makes you think they'll be in the receptive mode of God through you? They're not going to get it. They're not going to get it. But you can put yourself in the receptive mode by giving them the benefit of the doubt. They're giving up their evening. They mean well. They are caring, compassionate people. They do want to make a difference. If you will make your list of positive aspects about the people that are driving you nuts, pretty soon they'll stop driving you nuts and they'll go away. Because when you activate within yourself something that they are not regularly demonstrating, they cannot stay in your experience. Law of attraction just doesn't allow them to stay up close to you. But if you are arguing with them, trying to wrestle them to the ground and make them understand, if you are reasoning with them, if you are trying to create the path of their least resistance for them, now you're all twirled up in their energy and they're all around you all the time. Helpful?
Yes.